we need to say no, a big no to tyrants, a big no to the radical right, a big no to the Supreme Court for supporting this guy, and a big no to the Republican Party that's given up and let Trump be their savior. He's no savior. He's the devil. He's dangerous Donald Trump. Are actually, if you think about the not upholding the separation of church and state, they want a theocracy on some level, a theocracy that supports a totalitarian government where white supremacists rule our country and decide who is a winner and who is a loser. And guess what? Trump is the loser. And we will all lose if he gets into office again. He is the loser. He's a sore loser. He's a tyrant. He's a con man. And he is a pathological liar. And America will never get people's respect in the world if they put into office a pathological liar.
And in my opinion, this is a corrupt court that has kicked the can down the road to such a degree that Trump will not get a trial before the election, and the American people have a right to that, innocent or not, guilty or whatever.
America since 1776 is all about democracy. That's why this country exists. This Supreme Court here of 9 members, okay, is to handle law. Across the street is the House of Representatives and the Senate, the U.S. Capitol. That's to deter in politics. This and that should not interfere. Unfortunately, displace the meaning the Supreme Court has, and that's wrong. So yes, that will affect democracy as we know it.
All of us here today do not want to see our election victory stolen by emboldened radical left Democrats, which is what they're doing.
He did not get the 100% absolute immunity for all that he had done that he was asking for. But by and large, I would say this is a good day for President Trump. At the very least, he's going to get a delay in the beginning of any criminal trial that will take place. So I would say it was not 100% victory, but it's certainly a good day for Donald Trump. What it does is it throws into question which of the alleged activities Donald Trump did can be subject to prosecution. The court, in a rather complicated way, carved out various levels of immunity that a president might enjoy. I mean, they literally said a former president enjoys some immunity, which is of course, not a very helpful term, but they then went on to try to define to which actions that immunity extends. And they've remanded most of the case back to the district court to have Judge Chutkan determine whether or not what Trump is alleged to have done is official, in which case it would be immune for prosecution, or unofficial, in which case it could be prosecuted. The court didn't come down definitively either way, but they did strike a very protective balance for the president. In other words, it's going to be very challenging for Jack Smith to win the argument that everything alleged in the indictment is an unofficial act. And if a trial does go forward on President Trump, it's likely going to be on far fewer activities than are currently in the indictment. So it's going to be a narrowing, an undercutting of Jack Smith's case. Not a complete ending of it, but certainly a much tighter rope he has to walk to have Trump held criminally accountable.
Was an unprecedented assault on the seat of American democracy. It's described in the indictment.
What the court has said, or the court majority has said, is that if a conduct is deemed to be, a particular activity is deemed to be official, it can't be used as evidence to help prosecute what is unofficial or private. So even if Jack Smith's allowed to go forward with what with what Trump's counsel admitted in oral argument were some private acts for which Trump can be prosecuted, his official acts that are somehow connected to those private acts cannot be used as evidence of those acts. So again, it's going to be a very limited set of circumstances and actions for which Jack Smith is going to be able to bring his case, much less prove his case.
What the court majority does is erect a series of procedural barriers and hurdles that the special prosecutor, Jack Smith, would have to clear prior to pursuing any of the particular charges. And those would be fact-intensive inquiries, and the president or the former president would have the opportunity to challenge those inquiries and to try and make the argument that basically everything he did amounted to an official act, and therefore under this entirely new, unprecedented, and in my view, invented doctrine, that the particular actions were official or unofficial, depending on which side you were on. So the net result of this, on top of the delays that the court imposed in taking the case and in not taking the case when Jack Smith asked them to months and months ago, is to hand President Trump a victory as he's nearing the finish line of the campaign. The real nub of the decision is that somehow an executive branch official can be cloaked with immunity as a way of protecting the executive's discretion. That's the majority's rationale, that the executive needs to have broad discretion to do the things that need to get done to run the country. But if that immunity is so broad as to encompass things that are, by every other definition, illegal, then official action on the part of the president can include things like self-aggrandizing efforts to stay in power, despite the attempt to stay in power being manifestly at odds with every other law in a democratic system, including our election laws. That is scary. And as both Justice Sotomayor and Justice Jackson point out in their dissents, what this sets up in terms of an incentive structure ought to be terrifying to every American and frankly every citizen around the world who believes in the rule of law. But the new precedent here isn't just new in the sense that we haven't had these facts before. It is also new in the sense that the court establishes, invents, creates, or if you want to view the lens more favorably to the majority, finds a doctrine that had never before existed, which says that instead of equality before the law, where everyone is equal before the law and no man or woman is above the law, one man or woman has the presumption that they are above the law. That, in the scheme of American democracy, especially viewed around the world, is not a city on a hill. That's a do as I say, not as I do.
It could represent a massive change, in part depending upon whether or not we have a president who takes these kind of actions again, right? If a president decides to pursue criminal or allegedly criminal or what come close to criminal activity, he now has much more protection from criminal prosecution than he did before. Of course, if a president never got close to that line, you wouldn't even have this issue. So if we don't have a repeat of these historical circumstances, this opinion will stand as a tremendous legal victory for this particular president. If, on the other hand, as of course the dissent was worried about and was worried about at oral argument, what you've now done is freed up a president to basically engage in criminal activity with a very small chance of accountability, then this not only reshapes the presidency, it can reshape the entire functioning of American democracy. Well, if you have a president who is able to take all kinds of actions that a citizen or another member of the government would not be able to take, and there's no criminal accountability, to me, that's not the same separation of powers democratic system that we have now. You're veering more in at least the potential for an authoritarian or dictatorial regime, which is, of course, what many people are afraid Donald Trump will do.
We have a judge that's extremely, let's say complicated, but let's also say conflicted.